All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Eye Openers. Thank you so much for joining me today. I've taken 2 weeks off, so I'm kind of just like getting in the groove of things again, and it is pretty easy to do so with my guest today. Welcome, Al. Thanks for being here.
Good morning, Brittany. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and even though it's 9:15, which some people would consider late in the morning, this is my first opportunity to drink warm coffee without interruption. How about you?
Well, I'm on my second cup here. So I have a 2.5-year-old who's had these, she's afraid of bugs at night now for some weird reason for the last couple of weeks. So she was up for a while, so we had to make sure she was settled. So I'm probably 2 cups in now, two and a half-ish. So.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely try. Like I have a 2.5-year-old as well, and she gets up at like 6, but it's like, we've got lots of things we have to do. They wake up with so much energy, and I'm trying to figure out how to do that. Maybe it's because they go to bed at like 7:30.
Yeah, it could be that. So mine wakes up with energy, and at 7:30 has just as much. So she is a ball of fire for real. So
awesome.
Yeah.
So what are you drinking today? I mean, I know you said you've got some coffee, but kind of my thing. I like to talk about it.
Yeah, I'd love to tell you I have this great coffee. So I'm Colombian, so coffee is an important part of my culture. And I'd love to tell you I have this great Colombian blend, but I don't. I got the stuff from the break room. I'm here at the office right now, and it's the Keurig K-Cup stuff. But if it's hot and it's black, I'm drinking it. It does the job.
Yeah.
There.
So I know that you, we'll get into your like assessment and data use and psychology stuff, how you use it in your business in a second. But I was thinking another question I got to add to this show is how do you prefer your coffee? Because I think we'll find some ties to personality and psychology if we ask. So you said you take yours black, which is interesting. It's
black, no
not
sugar.
for everyone.
But I did watch one of your interviews before when you commented how it's New Englanders that drink iced coffee in the winter. Yes. I'm that guy for sure. Like it'll be -10 and I got a cup of iced coffee. So today it's warm, but like 90% of the time I'm drinking iced coffee.
Okay, well, we'll look out for you then with your iced coffee cup. So I'm so excited to have you here, and I want to give you like a real proper introduction so people really know like who's on the call right now. So Al, you purchased your first stock when you were 13 years old. So we're all going to learn a thing or two today about finance, which I'm super excited about. And you've maintained a deep-rooted passion for improving people's lives through finance. So people might be like, why is she having this finance guy on? But really, like, you are different. I have talked to a lot of people, and I really, really love your approach. So you're currently the director of investment strategy for Independence Financial Partners, which is a comprehensive wealth management firm whose Rhode Island roots go back to 1909, which is awesome. If you're a Rhode Islander, like we love hearing stories like that. And you guys shape investment strategy for $2.5 billion in assets. You're also the founder of AMP Consulting Group, which is an outsourced investment management service that partners with dozens of financial advisors throughout Southern New England to deliver a fully differentiated wealth management experience for more than 1,000 clients across the country. Now, that is what really got me interested in speaking with you a while ago. Could you dive in and tell us a bit about how that came to be?
Yeah. So, as you alluded to, I like to think that I didn't find investments. Investments very much found me. And I'll share the story with you. I was actually in Spanish class, early high school. I was 13 years old. And again,
you had to take Spanish class?
I did, but I picked it because, it was
because it was going to be easy for you.
I needed something other than gym to kind of break up the day. Right.
Okay.
It was clearly a cakewalk. And I remember this, the kid's name was Mike Tower. So shout out to you, Mike Tower. I haven't talked to you in in so many years, but you're the one that got this train started. So he sits in front of me in Spanish class. He turns around. He hadn't done his homework. He's like, "Hey, Junior." Everyone calls me Junior that knows me. Can you do my Spanish homework? So naturally I say, well, what's in it for me? Right. And he's like, well, my dad is this stockbroker and I'll give you this great stock tip. So I'm 13 years old. I don't come from any money like that. So I don't know what a stock is, but I didn't want to look like an idiot. And it's going to take me 10 seconds to do his homework. So I said, I'll play ball. So I do his homework and he gives me the name. It was a company called Platforms International. And essentially it was these big blimps. They had these satellites on them. They would hover over third world countries and provide cellular access to companies that couldn't afford the infrastructure, all above my head, right? So that wasn't this genius thesis or anything. But, I said, all right, let me buy some of this stock. I bought it at like 14 cents. And then I saw it climb to 30 cents. And then I saw it go to 70 cents. And then I saw it eventually get to $2. And Brittany, you couldn't tell me I wasn't going to be a millionaire by the time I was 20 years old. I was convinced, like, I'm the guy. Like, I found the key to success here. So it kind of started the ball rolling. And while everybody my age was kind of following Michael Jordan and all the athletes, I was doing the same, but I was reading about Seth Klarman's Margin of Safety and Warren Buffett books and Peter Lynch, because I was just gravitated to it. The way that ended was unfortunate in that, 9/11 happened. A couple years in, the entire world became a no-fly zone. So they took down my blimps. The stock pretty much crashed, but it didn't matter, right? The seeds were planted. And fast forward to kind of where I got into this industry.
Yeah.
I want to say where the business started was a combination of kind of this imposter syndrome when you first start in the industry and not knowing kind of how to move and what you're going to do and where you're going to go. But like a smidge of this kind of overconfidence where I felt like I had something others didn't have, and that I'd been studying investments since I was 13 years old. And even though they were double my age, some of the advisors we were working with, I knew that one day I was going to be helping them with that. So that's a long kind of winded way of saying what started that was just a passion that came about in that Spanish class years back.
Yeah, well, thanks for even saying the words imposter syndrome. We in my last episode we talked about that a bit, but it's so good to hear other people mention it. And that's really the reason why I have this show is I want the conversation to be real and authentic about what it really takes to get to where you are, and that there are these moments where we don't feel like we know everything and that it's all 100% certain and laid out for us, and that there are these gaps, right? And you have to be ready to just take the leap anyway. You had some experience, you did have some confidence, you knew you didn't know everything, and it was hard to establish yourself, right? Like, who's going to listen to my, wealth management advice when I'm 23 years old, right? I've definitely, that resonates with me. Like, I remember having that feeling when I started my business, but you just take a step forward anyway, and you just keep learning, you just keep growing. So imposter syndrome does not mean you should stop going in that direction at all. It probably means you're on the right path.
Yeah. And in fact, it's probably in most cases the fuel that takes you to the next level, that makes you kind of avoid complacency, if you will, in your career.
Really great point. That's so true. So what would you say is a super valuable thing that you learned from a mentor or a previous boss?
Yeah, well, I think it kind of dovetails off the last part of just kind of betting on yourself, right? Because we live in a world, right? So I'm in the investment world, and the most powerful force in investment is compounding interest, which is basically that if you have a long period of time and you don't overtinker, money will simply grow on itself, and it will lead to these really great outcomes as long as you can be a person that doesn't disrupt that needlessly. And I think that applies to everything, whether you're a business owner, whether it's in life. Compounding interest in anything that you do has enormous benefits. And when you bet on yourself, you're compounding interest for an entire lifetime, arguably even longer if you can create a business that lasts longer than you do. So I would say that the most important thing I've learned early on was the importance of compounding interest and betting on yourself, because there's not going to be anything that can take that away from you. Not a recession, not the mistakes that, like you mentioned, inevitably happened. I think that's one of the key things to know, is that mistakes are just inevitable. There's no way you're going to avoid them. In fact, in investments, the Hall of Fame investors are right maybe 60% of the time, meaning they're right wrong a good 40% of the time. I guess we'll get to that later. It's about managing that risk. But yeah, betting on yourself and just continuously moving along and not giving up. I think that was the most important lesson I learned.
So did you learn that from yourself, or did you have a mentor that kind of propelled you in this space?
Yeah, it was a bit of trial and error, to be perfectly honest. I think I've been blessed to have people in my life that would kind of encourage me along the way. And but I didn't have someone necessarily tell me that. I think it was more about not letting people down who kind of believed in me. You kind of feel that, like, no matter what happens, I'm either going to die or I'm going to keep moving. because I can't be this failure, right? I have to find a way to make it work. And then you just kind of find your niche, right? It's what made me pursue my CFA charter, which is kind of this globally recognized investment standard, which is a really arduous test, but it just kind of led to me wanting to continuously better myself. And today I'm knee deep into learning about digital assets and machine learning and all the things that are going to be in the forefront of my industry in the future. So, just being a lifelong learner and trial and error is kind of what taught me that.
Yeah. If you are into AI and machine learning, you got to check out the episode with Marty King. So he talked all about that and how AI is coming for even white collar professional services. So
everything. AI is going to be a part of every business 10 years from now, without a doubt.
Yeah, but you already knew that because you have started to use data in a way that people don't necessarily use it in your business. Do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, I think that I'm a big believer that finance is at the intersection of math and psychology, right? Because in investing, a lot of times it's not all of the bets you make that work or any of that. It's what happens during moments when everyone is freaking out and losing their mind. And that's purely the emotion that comes for that. And you have kind of these layers of time, right? You have these moments where some people are losing their mind, but the people that have done it for long enough are saying, okay, we've seen this, we'll weather it. But then you have moments where everyone loses their mind, including that entire cohort. So like 2008 and 9, when the market collapsed. I think last year with COVID was a little different where it happened so quickly and everything recovered so quickly. But
last
March and April. But you do get these moments where what you do during those critical, I like to call them the tail events, is really what's going to be the biggest determinant of your outcomes. And we spend a lot of time trying to get to know the psychology of an investor, to make sure we know how to communicate with them, to make sure we know how to speak to them on their terms and develop strategies that not only make sense mathematically, but they can stick to. Because if you can't stick to a strategy, it doesn't matter how good it is. It's not going to work, right? So we use that type of data and just a whole host of other data to inform our decision making. But I do think if you're not paying attention to data, how are you informing your decisions? I'm a big believer of that.
Right. And so what are these kind of key differences? Like, what are you guys noticing in somebody who's able to stick to strategy versus not?
That's a great question, Brittany. And I think that goes to one of the biggest value adds of a financial advisor, which is to make sure a person can stick to their plan in the long term. I say that, and that's important because that's a meaningful part of our business, right? Our whole mission statement is to enhance and defend the value proposition of financial advisors, because I do think financial advisors largely want to do the right thing. They're largely wanting to help people, but they do get a bad rap, right? There's a lot of people that don't know exactly what to do. They're trying to make their way in their business, but they really aren't equipped to kind of, answer certain questions. And I think the more you can help them learn about their clients, the better they can be that buffer to help them make better decisions. Because a lot of the reasons someone hires a financial advisor is because they know, left to their own devices, they're going to freak out in that moment, but they shouldn't freak out. So if what we can do is help that advisor better communicate why you shouldn't freak out, whether it's an emotionally driven person or more of a cognitive driven person, because what we found is largely people fit in one of those two baskets, that makes them better, that makes their job better, and their clients can stick to that process.
Okay, awesome. And so, of course, like people who have been watching Eye Openers know that I'm just like fascinated with how psychology plays its part in business. And so this really spoke to me that, yes, of course, all financial advisors are going to be different and they can't escape their own biology, their own psychology. And so if you can't escape it, it's best to just understand it. That's and right. know what your tendencies are, and understand the history using data, like of decisions you've made, so that you can either like protect against those things those behaviors that you're going to like maybe succumb to, or create a system, to like better explore it and hopefully, make better, more informed decisions next time. So that's so great that you guys are doing that. I love hearing that. I wish every space is doing something similar. So I want to ask, so maybe having you speak about learning this for yourself, right? So what were some mistakes that you maybe made early in your career, either as a leader or manager or just an advisor, and maybe having this information has helped inform that and help you grow?
Yeah, that's a really good one. I think the biggest thing I learned from some of the mistakes, and there's been so many of them, it's that you can only win the game if you survive, right? And that means that you have to plan for your plan not going according to plan. I learned that really painfully when I was young. So, after the whole stock story, I was a bit entrepreneurial as a kid, right? So I was doing mortgages, doing everything, doing a lot of different things. I bought my first house. I was like 20 years old. I bought another one at 21, another at
Nice.
22. I started a construction company, doing all these things in college. And again, you couldn't tell me I didn't know what I was doing, right? I really thought I knew or I had it figured out. I was investing in real estate. Clearly, real estate never went down. That's what you learned for 30 years, that it was always going up. And then 2008 and 2009 hit. And not only was I finishing college and about to enter my career, I was literally watching everything I had built melt down, right? The whole thing was getting taken away from me. And what I learned from that is I wasn't built to survive. I thought I knew what I was doing because money was coming in. I was spending it just as fast, right? I was trying to keep up with everybody, worried about perception, going to the bar, buying champagne. It's a lot of fun, but then it suddenly all goes away very quickly.
Yeah.
So that's where that imposter syndrome I talked about came in. So when I started my career at 24, 23, 24 in this business, I wasn't like a clean slate out of college, like ready to take out of the, like on the world type of person, like most people are at that age. I was literally getting my ass handed to me at that period in time. Pardon my language. I was losing hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the imposter syndrome didn't come from me not thinking I knew investments. It came from saying, how is anyone going to take advice from me when my financial world is collapsing? Right? That's where I felt it. Like it felt disingenuous for me to be able to give someone advice where everything around me was melting. And it taught me those painful lessons that I learned. I think there are two important lessons for people to learn in finance here as we celebrate Financial Literacy Month is that you need to value savings because savings equals freedom and security. And what I didn't have during that time is enough savings to get me through that bad period of time where nobody really saw coming. And then the second thing was I wasn't well diversified. I thought I was because I had a construction company, I had real estate, I had tenants, but they're all in the same industry. And when that started to turn, everything went down at the same time. And that's really some of the advice we still give clients today, that you have to value savings because it keeps you in the game. And I know people talk about cash is trash and you shouldn't have really any cash, you should keep investing it. And I personally see that if you have too much cash, but you need enough cash to continuously keep you in the game because none of it matters if you can't survive. And then you have to learn how to diversify your streams of income because there will always be a point in time where one of them does not work. And in fact, one of them will fail miserably and you have to have another lever to pull.
Yeah. Yeah. And you reminded me that this is the exact reason why I had you on today, which is it is Financial Literacy Month. And so what is something that you see when maybe this client has never had an advisor before? What are some of the, what's the importance of financial literacy, even from like a very fundamental level that would probably speak to everyone watching today?
Yeah, I think our industry does a poor job convincing people that things have to be complicated to be effective, right? And a lot of people do that because it's how they substantiate their fees or do whatever. I think the most important thing you can do with a client in that first meeting is to really break it down to its most simple components, right? You need to have a certain bucket that just keeps you in the game. That's your kind of sleep at night type of bucket. If something happens in the market, you can't touch that. And it's this bucket that's going to keep you from touching that. And as soon as you start, I think, unlocking that level of comfort, saying, look, we're going to make a plan that is going to keep you in the game no matter what. Because I don't think what people fear is volatility, which is things going up and down. I think what people fear is losing all their money.
Right. Of course.
Right? And there's things you can do to manage that, right? When you broadly diversify, you might lose 60%, but asset classes by definition aren't going to go to zero, right? They're broad-based asset classes you're buying. So once you start breaking down, I think those fundamental building blocks, own diversified baskets of asset classes, because one stock can go to zero, but an asset class isn't going to go to zero. Have your safety bucket that's big enough for, for it to matter to you, to keep you sleeping well at night. You start breaking those down and people saying, well, that makes sense to people just intuitively. Like I can see where that works. And then you start getting into the rest of it. So I think keeping things simple is really what I think our industry needs to focus more on.
Yeah, really, really great point. And Daniel Dominguez is joining us and giving lots of feedback. Loves what you said about savings gives you freedom. And yes, help make sense of finances for the layperson. Super important. I found that just the further that I get in my family's financial journey, I feel that so much of this information is just definitely not available to everyone. And it's definitely not understood as common knowledge. And so what do you think about that education gap that exists, and what should we be doing about that?
Yeah, that's super important. And I think part of the issue is that people understand finances differently. So there's not one silver bullet to teach different people from different kind of social economic backgrounds, from different starting points.
Right.
So it's kind of has to be like a bunch of different things happening for different groups. And a big shout out to the people that are really in Rhode Island doing great things. Margaret Brooks, Pat Page, Lee Lewis over at Junior Achievement, which I'm on the board of. Just an enormous amount of people that are involved in financial literacy throughout Rhode Island.
Yeah. Andy Posner, do you know him?
Andy Posner. Yeah, we had a golf tournament. We raised some money for Capital Good Fund. He's doing fantastic things. Just a lot of people. I think that's one of the things as we started embarking down financial literacy several years ago through CFA Society, was it's just inspiring to see how many people are willing to go out in the community and do things. But then you realize the reason it's so difficult is that everyone takes it in a different way, right? It won't mean the same when I go into like a high school on Mount Pleasant in Providence versus kind of a high school in East Greenwich. You'll have to communicate differently. You have to speak on their terms. And that's what can make it a little bit difficult. So I think more is needed in kind of different areas that are more maybe experimental and hands-on, especially for the communities where it just doesn't make sense. You can tell them compounding interest, but they don't have $20 to see grow right now. That doesn't matter to them. You got to find different ways to connect to them.
Right. That's a really great point. Thanks for that reminder that maybe there's some more even more fundamental work that has to be done, right, to even create the opportunity to invest. So tell me about a pivotal insight or breakthrough that you had that changed the way that you show up and lead, whether that's with clients or other advisors. But tell us about a time where all of a sudden, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't see this before. And now it changes the way that I look at things.
Yeah, I have to go back to kind of that big collapse of my whole financial life early on. And what that taught me were that tails drive everything. And what I mean by that is that in the investment world, you have kind of these distribution of outcomes, right? You're just looking at possibilities and probabilities. And most of the stuff happens in the middle. It's where you see that big bell curve go up. But then you have the tail ends, right? And those are the things that rarely ever happen. But when they happen, they can be catastrophic. They can really set the tone and be more disproportionately affecting and impact your long-term outcomes than anything that happens in the middle. And that was a pivotal insight for us because it gave us the insight as to what we needed to do as an outsourced manager to be different than some of the other managers that are out there, right? Because we're competing with the BlackRocks, the Goldman, the advisors we work with can choose a plethora of platforms, but why do they come to us? It's because during those times, those tail periods, that's when our team adds the most value. And I think when you start thinking about how tails drive everything, you start forgiving yourself more and realizing that failure is pretty common, right? Bad things are going to happen all the time. What you need to do is protect against the worst things wiping you out. As long as you stay in the game at that point, you'll do pretty good. And there's some great examples of how kind of tail drives everything. So if you look at Warren Buffett, you know, he might have made 500 investments in his life, but he'll tell you that only 10 of them are really what mattered, that really got them to where they wanted to be. If you look at the Russell 3000, which is this big index of a bunch of stocks, large caps, small caps, you know, broadly diversified basket of companies. If you go look from 1980 to 2019, 40% of those companies lost more than 70% of their value and never recovered. And that's a big number when you realize that to be a public company, you already had to have some level of success. You weren't just going to make your way into the market. And that most of the returns driven from 1980 to 2019 in the Russell 3000 came from 7% of the companies that had these outlier effects. So, and then you see companies like Amazon, where they do a million different things, but all of their profitability is driven by something like Prime and AWS, right? A comedian, when he goes on stage and you're seeing their work on Netflix, you're seeing the tail jokes. You're not seeing all the stuff that they tried in the dingy club but didn't work. They boot them off stage. You're seeing the small subset of things that actually worked. And, you know, there's this great book, Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, that references some of these. But I think that's so important for business owners to learn, because I think we're living more and more in a time where you're confusing popularity with excellence. And what you tend to see is people's highlight reels. You're seeing their tail events, and you're not seeing all of the junk in the middle that got them to where they go. And there was this great quote, someone on my LinkedIn community, I don't know who said it. They said, if I'm paraphrasing, but if you source your confidence from the wrong place, the interest rate is crazy. And I think that is spot on, because a lot of people are sourcing their confidence from things that are like pillars of sand, if you will. And if you don't kind of look through that and kind of have confidence in your process, you're gonna lose out on a lot. So, you know, long-winded way again, but tails drive everything. And as soon as you come to terms with that, you're going to be easier on yourself and realize, I don't know everything. I just have to stay in the game.
Thank you so much for all those examples too, because I think that really helps people see it, you know, in motion, and what does it really look like in real life. I mean, we hear all the time, I'll speak for myself. I hear all the time, fail fast, and move forward, fail and move forward. We need to innovate, we need to iterate, but people don't like the feeling of failure. And so I think so many people are actually avoiding it. But the truth is that it's the way, like it's part of it. If you're going to stay in the game, it's going to happen. And it's all about how you get back up. That's really going to determine, what's next for you and what ultimately is your trajectory. And so honestly, I've found like it's like a muscle. Like the more you do it, honestly, the easier it gets. And it gets easier to keep moving forward and to kind of realize that, I tried something, but I need to keep trying it, like in order to reach the thing that's excellent that I'm going to put out there. And the more you realize that just because something like didn't land or didn't become a home run doesn't mean you suck.
That's right.
I think that's it, is like we're so like fragile now with social media that, we just feel like we're just going to like implode in a second if we don't get the likes we want or the feedback or all this external validation. But like, if you can stop from the focus being so outward and turn it back inward and think about where am I really trying to get to, you realize that you have to kind of take these small little risks like more frequently.
Yeah, no, and when you do go through those and kind of, I know I'm jumping around, but going back to that early stage of my life, I think something really valuable that came from that is it made me not afraid to fail. You realize that it's not the end of the world, right? You'll figure it out, you'll pick back up, and you'll keep it moving. And I think that is an empowering thing. So I'm never an advocate for like wanting to fail. I think sometimes people say like, hey, you want to fail as much as possible. And I don't know if I agree with that. You want to fail as least as possible, but you don't want to be afraid of taking the chances needed to be innovative, as long as you're not betting the farm, right? If you have the wherewithal to survive, then innovate and try, and don't be afraid of failure, because you've done what it takes to know that if it doesn't work, I'm not I'm not wiped out. I think that's a key kind of
Yeah.
distinction there.
Right. Really good point. So along that vein, what do you see as the next greatest challenge or opportunity in front of you?
Yeah, I think as it relates to my industry and financial services, I think this is by the way the most exciting time, right? We're about to enter a time where a lot of things are going to change. The way finance is done, how technology has come into it. You're starting to see the earliness and the newness of digital assets and that whole movement. That is all just getting started. And the way that my generation, the millennial generation, views investments and stores of value is going to look a lot different than how previous generations did. So I think to me that's wildly exciting. But the problem there is that the industry as a whole is woefully unprepared because it didn't do a good job in the last 10, 15 years training young people on how to give financial advice. And there's a couple of structural reasons for that. There's a big move in our industry to go independent and go RIA and kind of have your own shop. And that's great for the person doing it, but it's not great for someone who has to learn, because what's happening is that these business owners don't necessarily have time to spend with that young person and mentor them and teach them the ropes. And we've seen that now for decades. So I think, you're going to see in the next 10, 15 years, the biggest transfer of wealth happen from the baby boomer generation to the millennial generation. But my concern is that there's not going to be enough people that look like them, that talk like them, that are their age, that understand what they're going to in the digital age, that can give them good advice. And that's where I think not only the future's headed, but I also do see that, which I think is another question, what the next opportunity or challenge will be, is basically how do you find a way to start training effectively young people to get in this industry to service this huge transfer of wealth that's about to happen. Because some people think robo are going to be an answer to that, and it's going to be a piece, but they just don't realize how investments work. Again, it's at the intersection of math and psychology. And because psychology is involved, you're never going to get rid of a financial advisor largely, because they're the ones that have to be that circuit breaker. But the nature of that relationship, I think, changes a little bit, and how that, the cost of it and a lot of different things within that. So.
Awesome. Really excellent answer. I mean, you just reinforced why I wanted to have you on. Just really, really important stuff to pay attention to, and a really great opportunity that I heard you just speak about. So how can people find you if they want to talk with you about, if they're an advisor themselves, they want to do the data assessment, or how can people work with you and find you?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn's probably the only way. So I think one of the chinks in the armor for sure is that we're not good marketers, right? We prefer to be the Robin to the Batman, who we consider the advisor. So we've always wanted to be behind the scenes. We're in a big ego business. That's kind of the truth of it. So we rather have our advisors have their shine, and we're kind of like the geeks in the corner. They keep us in a cage, and we come out just to try to add value here and there. So on LinkedIn is good. I don't have any other social media. I think that's helped me in a lot of ways. I think that's probably hurt me in some others. I'll probably have to change that at some point, but reach out to me on LinkedIn, and, always happy to have a cup of coffee and chat, because this is what I live for. This is what I do.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Al, for joining us today. Tons of amazing nuggets of advice and total eye-opening moments. So can't thank you enough. And if you're not catching this live, feel free to send me a message on whichever platform you're seeing this on, and I can connect you with Al as well. I'm really a big believer in creating connections to really add value. All right, everybody. So it is the end of our segment today, and I thanks Dan for sticking with us all the way through there. And I hope that you take this information about financial literacy, share it, think about how you can create more financial literacy in your community, maybe even just start with your own family. And I will see you guys next week for more eye openers. Thanks so much, everyone.
Take care, everyone.